The topic of today that I want to ask you about, because you've told us about in past shows about, hey, when's the best day to close your loan? But today I have something I want to share that I think is going to be kind of interesting. Is okay, that's a great theory, but is there a best day to lock in that rate? And is Wednesday the best day? And I'm like, is that fact or fiction?
Well, that's interesting. By the reason that you're asking the question, I suspect that you have a sense or a gut, feel that maybe Wednesday is the best day to lock. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, as I create these your rate grids from the 10-year, I noticed an interesting trend that every Wednesday, it seems like for the last several weeks, the lowest rate is somewhere right around Wednesday. I'm just curious, why is that, Art?
Well, yeah, and since you had prepared me for this discussion, I did a little bit of research on that, and I think what I came to conclude is it's inconclusive. Because I went back actually several months. I went back for the past year, and I literally was looking at the bond chart over that period of time and scrolling through it and looking at the date. I had a calendar out and looking at the days, which date is a Wednesday. And what I found really actually is kind of a mixed bag.
Okay.
There were some Wednesdays when it was up and then it dropped later in the week, and some Wednesdays it was down versus earlier in the week. And really what occurred to me is when you go back and look at economic data points that are released every week. And by the way, for any viewers out there, you can pull this up yourself. U.S. Economic Calendar. There's a website called MarketWatch where you can pull up a calendar of U.S. economic data points that are released every single week. And so really that's what drives the correlation between mortgage rates and bond yields from week to week. Now, a couple of things I will point out in terms of that, phenomenon that you were observing, at least more recently, is certain economic data points do tend to be released during the middle of the week. For example, just 2 weeks ago, the Fed had their meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday, and of course the meeting concluded midday Wednesday, and then they made their announcement. So, and the Fed always meets Tuesday and Wednesday, so that is always going to be a factor. But does that mean every time they meet, bond yields and mortgage rates dip? No. Sometimes it's the other way, depending on what the Fed says or what they announce. This 2 weeks ago, what happened was you saw a decrease in the bond yield end of day Tuesday. You can say, oh, that's almost midweek. But then what happened? Meetings concluded on Wednesday. They make their announcement, 0.5% reduction. Everybody's cheering. But oh, wait a minute, that 10-year bond yield's going up. That's people were like confused by that. At least consumers were. I was not surprised, frankly. I've been telling some people, hey, you're better off lock before the announcement, not after. Well, I don't always have the answer there, but after years and years and decades of watching this, I've noticed some patterns. And so that I think that has more to do with the dips from week to week and during the week. It's all about which economic data points are being released that day. And a lot of them do tend to be released midweek. First of the week and Fridays, not so much, except for a couple of things. The Fed's favorite inflation target, PCE, Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, is generally released on a Friday. That can move the markets. And the other thing, as I pointed out earlier, is going to happen tomorrow is the jobs report. Tomorrow we're going to hear how many more jobs were added to the economy and what the unemployment rate is. That's generally released on a Friday. So that can have an effect end of the week rather than on a Wednesday. So I think really ultimately, I think the lesson here is, to the extent you want to become, a financial nerd and start paying attention to the 10-year bond yield all the time, like I do, because I have to for what I do for a living, is maybe look at that U.S. economic calendar and then look at the 10-year bond and try to draw some parallels or connections between the data and how the bond market reacts. And the two things to focus on, if you want to just generally track mortgage rates and the bond market, or actually track the bond market so you know what's going on with mortgage rates, the two primary data points I would say you want to pay attention to are the inflation numbers, CPI, PPI, PCE, and the labor numbers. How many new jobs, the jobs report, initial claims for unemployment, and the unemployment rate. Because again, as I said earlier, the Fed's focus is dual. It's inflation and jobs. And so if you want to draw sort of a connection and follow what's going on with yields, pay attention to those two types of data points. And I think that's going to prepare you for what to expect. So if you're, if you're an agent, I would argue, take a look at the 10-year bond yield every day. I mean, you're out there selling homes. People are asking you, your borrowers, your sellers, and your buyers are saying, what are rates doing? Well, if you just look at the 10-year bond yield every day, you're going to get a pretty good idea where they're going. And if you're considering a refi or you're considering getting into the purchase market, same thing. Take a look at that 10-year bond yield. As it moves, you can pretty much bet the mortgage rates are moving in the same direction and by the same amount.